I never thought a garden could start a full-blown neighborhood war. Until HOA Karen showed up at my doorstep, glaring like I'd personally insulted her entire community. It was early Saturday morning, the sun glinting off my tomatoes and lavender, and she was already seething, clipboard in hand. "Your garden," she said, voice sharp enough to cut glass, "smells too good. It's offensive." Offensive? To smell flowers and herbs? My jaw nearly hit the pavement. I tried to reason with her. "Karen, it's just my garden. I grow lavender, basil, rosemary." "No excuses," she snapped, cutting me off. "It's disturbing the peace. The HOA has rules and you're breaking them." I blinked, stunned. I'd lived here for 10 years, never had a single complaint, and now my sweet-smelling basil was suddenly a crime scene. But the way she leaned in, her eyes practically shooting fire, made it clear she wasn't leaving without asserting control. That afternoon, she marched around my yard like a self-appointed queen, scrutinizing every bloom. She sniffed dramatically, wrinkling her nose at my roses. Every time I tried to explain that gardening was a hobby, she waved her hand dismissively. By the end, she left with a smug smile, as if she'd just saved the neighborhood from an olfactory catastrophe. I fumed. Me, offended by my garden? Laughable. But here's the thing, Karen didn't realize that I'm not just any gardener. I'm a little mischievous when provoked. That night, I wandered around my property thinking about how to make my point. How do you fight a Karen with nothing but plants? The answer came to me in a flash. Garlic. Garlic, the stinky, pungent hero of every kitchen and horror story for unsuspecting noses. The next morning, armed with gloves, a trowel, and several pounds of bulbs, I set to work. Around her pristine backyard pool, visible from my porch, I planted a thick border of garlic. Not just a few cloves scattered casually. No, this was a full-on garlic fortress, dense enough that anyone stepping near her water would be greeted with a wall of aroma that could knock out a skunk. I stepped back, admiring my handiwork. There was a certain poetic justice in it. She had come after my flowers. Now my garlic would come after her in return. I could almost see her reaction, outraged, flustered, maybe even speechless. Little did I know, that small act of garden rebellion would set off a chain of events that made the HOA meetings look like amateur hour. The smells, the arguments, the alliances forming between neighbors. It was about to become a full-blown, garlic-fueled showdown. Karen's reaction was nothing short of legendary. I woke the next morning to the faint sound of her shrieking across the street, which quickly escalated into full-blown yelling. I peeked through my blinds and saw her frantically waving her hands around the pool, nose scrunched, eyes watering. The garlic border I had planted was doing its job better than I ever could have imagined. It wasn't subtle. It was glorious. I couldn't help but grin. There she was, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, flailing in the air like she was in some sort of horror movie. But the villain was just a few humble cloves of garlic. I considered filming it, but I figured karma worked better live. My neighbors, curious from their own yards, started peeking over fences, some stifling laughs. Even old Mr. Jenkins, who never cracked a smile, looked like he might actually enjoy the spectacle. By mid-morning, Karen stormed over to my house, her heels clicking like a warning siren. "This is unacceptable!" she barked, hands on her hips, nostrils flaring. "I demand you remove these garlic plants immediately." I shrugged innocently. "Karen, they're just plants. I read somewhere that garlic keeps pests away. Maybe it'll help with the mosquitoes around your pool too." Her face went from red to purple in seconds. She sputtered, but the smell made coherent speech impossible. It was then I realized she was fumbling with her phone, probably planning her next HOA power move. I didn't interrupt. There's a certain satisfaction in letting someone try to strategize while fighting a garlic storm. Word spread fast. By afternoon, whispers of the Garlic Gate scandal had reached half the neighborhood. People started subtly placing bets on how long Karen would last before she filed a complaint. I got texts from neighbors I barely knew, asking if they could see the aroma barrier for themselves. A few even brought snacks and folding chairs to watch the chaos unfold. An impromptu garlic show. Karen, of course, escalated to threats. Letters were delivered to my mailbox, citing obscure rules about plant height, fragrance, and community disruption. I read them with a mix of awe and amusement. She had no idea she was playing right into the narrative I'd set. I didn't just defend my garden. I had created a story the neighborhood would talk about for weeks. That evening, as I watered my plants, I noticed Karen pacing her yard, muttering under her breath. She looked exhausted, defeated almost. The garlic wasn't just an aroma, it was a statement. And that statement was clear. My garden, my rules. Little did she know, this was only the beginning. The garlic was just Act 1. I had plans, and they were about to grow even bigger than my backyard. By the time Monday rolled around, the garlic saga had reached legendary status. The neighborhood buzzed like a beehive, and Karen was officially the antagonist in everyone's unofficial storyline. Even during the HOA meeting, whispers followed her like a cloud of smoke, people exchanging smirks when she tried to make her points. She had come in with a stack of rules and regulations, ready to launch another assault on my garden. But the room was already on my side. I sat quietly in the back, arms crossed, pretending to review my notes, though all I could think about was how absurd this had become. Karen's face was beet red, hands gripping the podium, as she rattled off complaints about offensive smells and disruption of peace. One brave neighbor raised a hand. "Karen," she said calmly, "it's garlic, it smells, it's natural. Maybe you're just overreacting." The room erupted in quiet laughter. Karen's glare could have melted steel. She sputtered, attempting to regain authority, but each word was drowned in muffled snickers and the occasional sniff from people subtly, testing the lingering aroma in the room. I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing out loud. My garlic army had infiltrated even the HOA meeting, if only through whispers and shared glances. When the meeting adjourned, Karen stormed past me, muttering something about legal action. That was when I decided to push the narrative further. I began planting even more garlic, not just around her pool this time, but in strategic spots along her driveway and entrance paths, creating a labyrinth of pungent barriers she couldn't ignore. Every step she took became an experience, every breath an ordeal. Neighbors started showing up unannounced, curious or amused, all of them witnessing Karen's battle against a handful of humble bulbs. Some secretly offered advice. "Try companion planting with chives. They're great at masking garlic." Others just laughed openly, waving as they walked by her flustered form. Even the mailman began delivering packages with a tentative sniff, muttering, "Wow, that's strong." Karen's fury was palpable. Every complaint, every HOA letter, every phone call she made seemed to escalate in desperation. Yet I remained calm, tending to my garden like a general surveying a battlefield. The garlic was no longer just a plant. It had become a symbol of poetic justice, an invisible army with a smell sharp enough to slice through arrogance. By nightfall, I realized Karen had crossed an invisible threshold. She wasn't just angry, she was obsessed. An obsession is a dangerous game when the other player is calm, clever, and armed with herbs. I smiled to myself, already plotting the next move. This was turning into more than a garden dispute. It was an artful, aromatic war, and I was winning. By the time the weekend rolled around, Karen had reached full meltdown mode. I watched from my porch as she stomped around her yard, waving HOA letters like flags of surrender, her face twisted in fury and disbelief. The garlic had multiplied, spread through every inch of strategic planting, creating a pungent labyrinth she couldn't navigate without gagging. Even the neighbors, now openly entertained, were cheering silently from behind fences. But I wasn't done. I had one final move, a surprise that would cement the garlic saga in neighborhood lore forever. I purchased a few barrels of compost and enriched the soil near her property line. Not just any compost, this was the potent, garlic-friendly kind that would encourage her plants to thrive while intensifying the aroma she had come to despise. I imagined her stepping out in the morning, inhaling a full bouquet of garlic-laden air, realizing that the more she tried to combat nature, the more victorious it became. Monday morning came, and Karen was ready to erupt. She stormed over, clutching a stack of HOA forms and legal threats. "This is harassment," she screamed. "You've gone too far this time." I smiled serenely. "Karen," I said, "I'm just gardening. It's amazing what a little soil, sunlight, and patience can do." Her eyes bulged. She tried to argue, but every word was drowned out by the neighbors quietly observing, some shaking their heads in disbelief at her obsession. Her own community had turned against her. The garlic had not only conquered her pool and driveway, but also her credibility. By afternoon, she had vanished, retreating indoors, defeated. No more HOA complaints, no more angry letters. Her reign as the self-appointed neighborhood tyrant had ended, not with a lawsuit, not with force, but with plants, persistence, and a little poetic justice. I stood in my garden, inhaling the fresh air and the faint aroma of victory mingled with garlic. My tomatoes were thriving. The lavender swayed gently in the breeze, and even my neighbors smiled and waved as they passed by. Gardening had always been my passion, but now it had become a statement, a reminder that sometimes creativity and patience are far more effective than anger or authority. And Karen? Well, she's still in the neighborhood, but I haven't seen her in weeks. I like to imagine she stays inside, plotting her next HOA coup, while my garlic army continues to thrive, silent and pungent, guarding my garden like loyal soldiers. It's a simple story, really. Stand your ground, defend what's yours, and sometimes fight fire or overly officious neighbors with garlic. And that's exactly what I did. Thanks for sticking with me through this wild HOA garlic saga. If you enjoyed watching me stand up to Karen, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of my neighborhood adventures. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done if you were in my garden. And don't forget to like this video if you want more stories like this. Your support really helps the channel grow.